So let's talk a little bit about strengthening balancing thoughts. So we have a discussion with our clients where we identify an automatic thought. We then take them through a process of evaluating that thought. And hopefully at the end of that discussion, we come up with a balancing thought. Some alternative way of looking at situations that is more functional for them and leads to feeling better. So let me tell a story. When I was a student, I really disliked doing papers. I was a terrible procrastinator in doing my papers. I always put them off because I just didn't like doing them. And so there was always this last-minute rush and this kind of chaos, and I would be handing my papers in at the very last minute. I remember tracking professors down as they got into their car to leave for the day because I was just at the very last minute of handing in my papers. And when this happened, I didn't feel very good about handing in a paper. And I realized that I was in this negative cycle. I was putting off doing my papers, this mad rush, and then this sort of disappointing kind of experience of handing in my paper. And I realized I needed to change the way that I approached this and the way that I thought about it. And so what I did is I started to celebrate when I was finishing a paper, and so that I would have some positive feeling about doing the paper. And I would say to myself, I've done the best job I can in the time that I have. So when I shifted my thinking and my self-talk about doing papers, then I had more pleasure as I handed in the paper, and then I didn't feel this sort of avoidance of writing the next paper. It was easier to move on, and I was able to kind of start up better. So I share that as an example of kind of shifting your thinking as a way to change your mood and change your behavior. So when we get a client to the point where they're able to identify a more balanced thought or an alternative way of looking at things, we want to come up with a way to make it stick. So in the book, a number of ideas are given there, and so things like writing things on cue cards, making notes from the therapy session, having the clients read those notes after the session, and so those are some good things. Some other things that I've seen clinicians do. One thing is taking an elastic band, and when you have kind of your negative thought, you snap the band and think of your alternate balancing thought. I've never done that because I don't like the idea of incurring physical pain on people, but I have seen people doing that. But some of the things that I have done is kind of go a little bit into the craft world. This is magnetic tape. You can peel it off, and on the back is a magnet. And so you can put letters on the top, and you can create yourself a kind of a fridge magnet. And so you kind of use one of these demo label makers, and you can stick that onto the magnetic, and then you get a fridge magnet that you can put on there. So something simple, and that's similar to kind of using stickies and writing alternate thoughts that people can stick on a bathroom mirror or some location where they're likely to read it. Another thing that I've done is that clients seem to have done really well with is to use rocks. So I have a box of rocks here that I always kept in my office, and I would let clients pick a rock. So when we had a balancing thought, we would write that balancing thought on the rock. And then the rock would be something that the client could take with them in their pocket. And so we'd have this thing, touch the rock, think the thought. And there was something about sort of the tactile nature of that that appealed to clients. In fact, clients would sometimes get quite upset if they lost the rock. And, can I have a new rock? And sure, of course you can have a new rock. So anyways, it's kind of a fun thing to do. And you make it a little bit crafty. And it seems to kind of work well with people. So when you come up with a balancing thought and you come up with a coping card or a fridge magnet or one of these rocks, the important thing here is that it's more than just coming up with a positive affirmation. As we've talked about before, clients need to believe what they're saying to themselves because you've gone through a process of identifying the evidence that makes that thought at least mostly true for the client. So if they're looking at the coping card or the rock and they're saying to themselves, oh, I don't know if that's true, then they can go back to the conversation that they had with you or your therapy notes and look at the evidence that supports the balancing thought and take themselves again through that process of why do I believe this thought, why do I believe my negative thought, and what is the evidence to say is that negative thought maybe not as true and that the balancing thought is actually a more accurate thought and a more functional thought. So those are some of the things that I've done, and hopefully that's helpful to you, and good luck with that.